Tonight, we are talking a little bit about the college football playoff, Auburn basketball, and Derrick Brown and Anthony Schwartz. Anthony Schwartz and Derrick Brown both wear number 5. They have a lot in common. No, they are not the same size. They do not play the same position, but they do have a lot in common, which we will talk about a little bit later on in this particular podcast. So, as all of you all know, the reason, well, actually, I'm telling you guys now, the reason that the podcast was a little bit delayed is because I was trying to figure out what the heck Auburn's basketball team was doing, but Auburn actually pulled it off. Isaac Ozoro hit the game winner. Now, here's some things when we talk about Auburn basketball. Big shout out to Real Deal Will that gives us that information on Isaac Okoro, actually. And here's the thing. I think Auburn's basketball team, they're still a work in progress. One thing I have noticed that's a positive is their point distribution. They have about 4 or 5 guys per game that get double digits. As a matter of fact, tonight, they actually had about 32 points off the bench. Well, actually 34, I think, bench points, but they do need to continuing to work on improving on turnovers. And I think their free throw shooting is absolutely abysmal. And that's something that once, Auburn gets into SEC play might be a big of a problem, baby, because you got to hit those free throws. But this team is starting to gel together. And, especially if you played sports before, you know that what's going on, James Coburn, you know that wins like these are character building and they're team building, and they can go a long way as far as confidence goes, as the season progresses. Big shout out to the Auburn Tigers basketball team, 2-0, better than what we can say about Kentucky. Kentucky actually lost to Evansville at home today. Woo! Not a good thing for the Kentucky Wildcats. But anyway, let's get into this college football playoff thing. All right, so we got number 1, LSU, number 2, Ohio State, number 3, Clemson, number 4, Georgia. All right, so LSU honestly is a sure, they are a solid pick for the number 1 team in the country. Going to Alabama, a place that they haven't won in a long time, were pretty much dominant for the most part of that game. Then Alabama closes in, make that a 46-41 game. Matter of fact, at halftime, that score was 32-13. You look at Tua Tagovailoa with a lot of unforced errors, looking kind of Jeremy Johnson-ish. Y'all remember Jeremy Johnson in the game against, what's up, Birdseye? Roll Tide. What's up, Melvin? Man, come on, Melvin. Get in here and talk that trash now. We have to run your ass off here. Big shout out to Melvin Reynolds. He's from my hometown, man. We talk a lot of trash about Auburn versus Alabama. He's a big Alabama fan. Matter of fact, I ran into Melvin this weekend. Big shout out to Melvin Reynolds, 46 Tuskegee, Alabama. Appreciate you coming on tonight. Bird's War Damn Eagle 5 says War Eagle, bro. I appreciate it. But anyway, we talk about damn, where was I at, man? Melvin distracted me like he did the last time he came on here. All right, so we'll regroup. Anyway, LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, Georgia, and of course, Alabama and Oregon right now on the outside looking in. Where do we stand at this point? Oh, that's what we were talking about. We were talking about Auburn's basketball, and, they definitely got to work on free throws. Actually got out-rebounded tonight, which was a problem at some points last year. And Austin Wiley, I think, at a certain point has to become the 4 or 5-star recruit that he was out of high school and really become an impactful player for the Auburn Tigers in order for this basketball team to reach the heights that it reached last year. We talked about the fact that Auburn's coming off a Final Four appearance, doing 2-0, you win the game, you win the fight another day. So big shout out to the Auburn basketball team. And we're going to get into this college football playoff ranking. Like I said before, LSU is the obvious number 1 team in the country, defeating Alabama, a team that they have not beaten at all, especially not in Tuscaloosa in a long time. As a matter of fact, I can't remember the last time a team beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. Maybe it was Mississippi State or maybe Texas A&M. I just can't remember the last time. I know Auburn hadn't. Auburn usually beats them at home. But like I said before, early in that football game, you had a lot of I will say a lot of uncharacteristic miscues by Alabama. And, you know, Tua Tagovailoa, that fumble, like I said before, very Jeremy Johnson-ish. If you all remember Jeremy Johnson against LSU, he just drops back and the ball just inexplicably just flies out of his hands. Very embarrassing moment for Jeremy Johnson, very similar to Tua Tagovailoa having a chance to put Alabama in a position to get ahead early, but instead, numerous miscues. The fumble by Piron as the punter actually put LSU in another good position to score. Next thing you know, you got a 32-13 halftime score for LSU on to, that 46-41 win as Ed Orgeron in his interesting dialect literally cusses Alabama out, said, "We're going to out-recruit you. We're going to beat you. F you, roll tide." And that's what I'm talking about. So we got Ohio State, who I think is a sure shot. They're on a nice little roll up there. Justin Fields, the former Georgia Bulldogs, actually showing his behind up there in Ohio State, leading them to the number 2 ranking and possibly a Heisman Trophy candidate. Actually is a Heisman Trophy candidate. Clemson actually goes up 2 spots, up to number 3 in the poll this week. Now, I just don't think Clemson is going to be challenged by any means. I think they're going to go all the way ACC championship and just going to kind of ease the matter of fact, they're going to be the Notre Dame of this year. They're going to ease their way into the playoffs, kind of unchallenged, uninjured, all that other stuff, and let the chips fall as they may after that. Now, my biggest surprise of the week is the fact that the Georgia Bulldogs is the number 4 team in the country in the college football playoff. Now, this is not to take anything away from Georgia's accomplishments up to this point. Statistically, one of the top defenses in the country. They only allow 10 points per game. I mean, hell, they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown all year. Teams are finding it very hard to score on Georgia. And especially in the run game, that's something that kind of hurt Florida last week, is that Florida just still has not been able to generate that run game, which has actually kept Florida kind of out of that elite status, not being able to run the ball consistently against teams to create that balance. Florida makes themselves very one-dimensional because they can't run the damn ball. And Trask is doing everything that he can do with the receivers that they have. Those guys are actually pretty good. But in the SEC and in Power 5 football, if you don't have some degree of, balance, you're not going to make it. And that's where Florida's at now. And that's why on the slick, I'm kind of pissed off that Auburn lost that game, because I think that's a game when you talk about talent for talent. I just think that the Florida game is one that Auburn should have won. That's why I was livid after that game, because I felt like that's the one, the top 10 game that Auburn needed to win, because I didn't like Auburn's chances of beating LSU. But like I said, all those things, kind of came to pass. Yeah, okay, I appreciate that, man. Last home loss was the Ole Miss in 2015. Was that one where they had that crazy tip pass for a touchdown? I think it was. It was actually kind of funny seeing Alabama go down like that. Now, here's a team that I think, could really, really make some noise in this thing. You talk about Oregon. Oregon is a team that, in my opinion, should have beat Auburn the first week, up 21-6, midway through the third quarter. Bo Nix started to kind of feel his groove, made a nice little audible play, touchdown to Eli Stove. Auburn wins that game 27-21. Fast forward down to Florida. Bo Nix plays the worst game he could possibly play. LSU. Actually, what's going on, Minion Mafia? Actually, Bo Nix really wasn't the liability totally in the LSU game. I think the offensive miscues were the biggest deal in that game, because, Bo Nix seemed to be kind of, oh, that's cool, man. You could be at the game, huh? But either way, Bo Nix wasn't necessarily the total liability in the LSU game. Yeah, he might have missed some, but I think the offensive miscues really put Auburn in a bind in that game. But back to Oregon. Oregon's only win has come against Washington, who was ranked number 25 at the time. I think, though, especially if Auburn continues to win, I think that, hey, we're going to talk about Derrick Brown in a minute. I think if Oregon wins out, they will be the Pac-12 champions. They will wind up facing, hey, I appreciate the $5 super chat. Hell yeah, let's go ahead and acknowledge Scorpio in the squad right there. $5 super chat. For those of y'all didn't know, I appreciate it, Jessica Roberts. I appreciate you jumping in. For those of you who don't know, this is something that's available. If you do want to donate to the channel, they have this little $ at the bottom of the chat. If you want to, donate some stuff, the channel is going to keep rolling. But hey, the super chats definitely help. I appreciate Scorpion and the squad for that $5 donation. I see Melvin is still talking trash. My homeboy from Tuskegee, Alabama. He's going to talk trash. He's going to talk trash throughout this whole thing. Everybody knows Bo Nix isn't a real quarterback. Melvin, I absolutely disagree. If there is a guy who threw for about 1,200, whatever, combined for about 1,200 yards, garnished every award possible as a high school quarterback, right now he's 7-2, ranked number 12 in the college football playoff. I think he's like a real quarterback. I mean, outside of the errant play against LSU and Florida, everybody don't know that. I think this game, though, to get to your point, I think that if Bo Nix lays an egg here, then we can start the flop talk. But right now, we just can't do it. Now, I will say this. If Bo Nix starts that whole bull about, the 41% completion percentage against a top 5 team, then yes, flop talk is going to start. Georgia's defense is good. However, who is the best offense they've played? Now, if it is Florida as the best offense that they played, then Florida is just not balanced enough to consider that the best offense. Their running game is super suspect. So this week will be an interesting test for Georgia because Auburn has the opportunity to possibly get the run game going. You talk about DJ Williams and Boobie Whitlow, all those guys back there could possibly put Georgia in a bind, defensively. All right, so holy sweet baby Jesus, what is he talking about? What a basketball game start. Oh, hey, we talked about, see you late, man. We talked about the basketball team earlier. I thought that, not Derrick Brown. See, now I'm getting distracted by the Derrick Brown thing. But I thought the basketball team, that's a very, good win for the basketball team, especially as it goes to character building, because early in the season, you have those, close wins on the road. Really proud of the basketball team today. We're going to keep going. People talking bad about Bo, but next year, you Bammers are going to eat y'all's words. Hell, the Bammers might eat them this year. So as we move along, we talk about Gus Malzahn. This is one of the biggest games, I think, in Gus Malzahn's career up to this point. Going up against Georgia, having an opportunity not only to knock Georgia off, but having an opportunity to make a historic, well, if nothing else, if Auburn can win out, beating Georgia, beating Alabama, if Auburn can win out, I think Auburn will at least start to push a narrative. Will at least start to push, well, maybe there's a different element of this particular committee committee decision making that we need to consider. Maybe we need to start considering strengths of schedules and real deal values of games, not necessarily having the conference championships as the total end all be all, but pushing a narrative. If Auburn can find a way to beat Georgia and Alabama, and maybe even, I think they have the better opportunity to beat Georgia handedly if the offense actually shows up, then Auburn can push a narrative. In my opinion, based on how the committee votes now, I think even if Auburn wins out, it's going to be hard pressed for them to put Auburn in, considering all the guys who are ahead, who actually won, who actually probably will win their conference out. Then it's really going to be hard. Okay. But either way, I think, like I said before, it's going to push a narrative if Auburn is able to win out. And if nothing else, if push comes to shove, Auburn definitely will be in a New Year's Six bowl, which is good for the Tigers. It puts you on, a good bowl game day, gives you that national exposure. So I think that'll be a pretty good deal for Auburn if they can, find a way to win out. Mark Robinson out of Tuskegee, Alabama. That's actually my hometown. I appreciate you coming on today. I wonder, what did South Carolina do to exploit the Georgia offense? Well, the thing is, Georgia's offense this year has not been the same as to what they've been able to do in prior years. In prior years, Georgia has been able to run the ball in a very dominant fashion. What they like to do is they have a situation where they have two running backs that both usually combine, the two running backs combined usually get about 2,000 yards. That hasn't been the case this year. Now, DeAndre Swift is doing his thing with his 800 yards. He's probably going to finish as a 1,000-yard rusher because he's got Auburn, he's got Texas A&M, and Georgia Tech. I would be perplexed if he wasn't able to pull off 200 yards in those 3 games. But where's the other guy? Zamir White hasn't lived up to the bill. I think he's been injured. And then I think his name is Brian Herrien, has not been that, because, it has been a situation kind of like Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, or, things like that. But you don't have that with Georgia this year. So that's an element of their offense that has been missing. Also, you look at the fact that Georgia lost a lot as far as the receiving core last year. You talk about Riley Ridley leaving early, Isaac Nauta, that great tight end that they had leaving last year. So you depend on guys like true freshman George Pickens and dude out of Miami, Kager, to anchor your wide receiver core. So that's why you've had kind of a, setback from an offensive standpoint. So it's really going to be interesting to see how Georgia is going to be able to navigate their offense that seems to be very basic at this point against a proven. I'm not doing no homer, because people be talking that homer talk. I ain't talking no homer talk. A proven Auburn defense. You take Georgia's defense and send them over to Baton Rouge and see if they come out 23-20. I don't think so. As a matter of fact, Georgia keep on winning. They're going to find out in the SEC championship game when, in my opinion, I think LSU torches Georgia in the SEC championship game. But that's just my opinion based on what I've been seeing on video footage of Georgia. They're not a bad football team, but I just don't see number 4 in the country. All right, so you got 2 guys on the Auburn football team who could be major game changers in this particular game between Georgia and Auburn. They both wear number 5. One is significantly bigger than the other one, but both of them have the impact that can really get Georgia off balance. Let's talk about my man, Big Derrick Brown first. Derrick Brown out of Sugar Hill, Georgia, went to Lanier High School, was coveted by Ed Orgeron, Kirby Smart, all of the top teams in the country that wanted a good defensive lineman. Derrick Brown coming into this season, now that I look back on it, I think Derrick Brown coming back was probably the best decision that he could have made. All right. One, last year, Derrick Brown was a good football player. Derrick Brown was a solid football player. Derrick Brown had dominant tendencies. But the problem was, Derrick Brown, first of all, it wasn't his team. Yeah, he played on the team, but I'm talking about from a leadership standpoint. Wasn't his team. This was Deshaun Davis, Montavious Atkinson. It was a team. So Derrick Brown didn't have that leadership portion of, hey, this is my team. I run this show. I'll go out on the limb and say, if Derrick Brown were to go out last year for the NFL draft, might have been a mid, second round draft pick at best. Now, here's where Derrick Brown's game has really transformed into where it is now. One, if you looked at the Oregon game, you probably was like, uh-oh, this thing is not quite going. Derrick Brown is not quite as dominant as we might have thought. as the next couple of weeks progress, there was even an article that came out that showed Derrick Brown's stock just falling, just plummeting because of his performance against Oregon. But what happened is Rodney Garner probably put some money in Derrick Brown's pockets by doing this. What's going on, Chief? What's going on is this. Cornish Miller, Tyrone Truesdale, of course, Marlon Davidson, and those guys being solid in the interior gave the opportunity for Derrick Brown to show his diversity up and down the field. So now when you're studying Derrick Brown, you got to figure out where he's going to line up at. Because normally he lines up in the A, B, C, no further than the C gap. But now you might catch Derrick Brown at the defensive end. You know what I'm saying? So that diversifies everything that NFL scouts are looking at. So that's putting money in Derrick Brown's pocket, and that's also making it very hard for a very solid offensive line like Georgia to constantly scheme for. Now, Oregon could scheme for him. I think Oregon and Georgia will be the best two offensive lines that Auburn will see. But Oregon could, Oregon kind of sort of knew where Derrick Brown was going to be because Auburn really hadn't established what they were able to do from a diversity standpoint. But once I appreciate it, Jessica. Jessica Roberts says that keep being, yeah, man, I really appreciate that. I thank you and War Eagle. You know what I'm saying? So I really love the way that Kevin Steele, Travis Williams, Rodney Garner, all those guys have been able to diversify. This is not just a good defense. The reason why there's such a good defense is because there's such a versatile defense. There's so much you can do with these guys. You know what I'm saying? Like the fact that you can bring Jeremiah Denson down to the Sam or Will linebacker and not miss a beat is cool. The fact that you are able from a personnel standpoint to run a freaking 3-1-7 against LSU, that shows great recruiting and just a great deal of schematics coaching wise, because they were saying that Kevin Steele was kind of dreaming this whole defense thing up for a couple of weeks. And I really, I was really impressed with what they were able to do. Now, let me tell you what they were able to accomplish against LSU. Number one, I told you all before, but y'all don't listen to me. Joe Burrow was, every time he threw the ball, he completed a pass for 12.2 yards on average. Against Auburn, 7.6. 79% completion percentage coming into the Auburn game. When Auburn comes to town, 76%. That's a huge deal. Also, the big plays. LSU did have one big play for 45 yards, but usually not only do they average 56 yards on the big play, but they have several big plays to go with it, and they don't win the time of possession because they score so freaking quick. So either way, not going to get off on that tangent. Derrick Brown is going to really be a huge factor. Y'all need to look out to see how Derrick Brown, his diversity, how it impacts Georgia's excellent. I'm not taking nothing away from them. Excellent offensive line. I think Derrick Brown would definitely be a game changer in the Georgia game because Derrick Brown is versatile. And he's got so many guys who are good. He's got so many guys that are good around him that has made him even better and has made his stock go up. So, I think Derrick Brown is definitely going to be a factor. You're not going to be – and see, the good news is you're not going to just be able to block down on Derrick Brown and everything is going to be all right. You still got Cornish Miller and Tyrone Truesdale. And let's just say if, Nick Cole decides to show up, and, of course, you got Marlon Davidson, that will make everything even more versatile. I did see the whole thing about the Georgia offensive line injuries. Probably going to talk about that on tomorrow. So the other number 5 is Anthony Schwartz. Okay, so it's no secret, Anthony Schwartz is arguably one of the fastest people in the world. He won like a youth gold medal or something like that. He's like the fastest person that, like the fastest person ever. The reason why I compare Anthony Schwartz to Derrick Brown is because both of these guys are very versatile in their craft. Anthony Schwartz, you can catch him on a jet sweep. You can catch him lined up at the slot. You can catch him lined up at the outside wide receiver. And he can definitely make you pay if you don't cover him properly. Anthony Schwartz can catch the football. Now, at the early part of the season, he couldn't catch it because he had a freaking cast on his arm. But now he's back somewhat full steam. You can catch him out in the flat. He catches the screens and he can take it to the house. He's a player that can really put you on edge. And the reason why I like Anthony Schwartz, because you talk about a team like Georgia, who I don't think has seen this type of versatility from a skill set standpoint on offense. Will Hastings is back. Eli Stove is back. Seth Williams never left. One guy I'm concerned about is Zach Farrar. I think, what the heck is he? Oh, also you got J.J. Wilson, who I think can be a factor here as well. The reason why I mentioned those names is because those names are synonymous to why Derrick Brown is so successful, like with your Tyrone Truesdales, your Derek Halls, your Cornish Millers. Them emerging actually helped Derrick Brown to exceed his talent set and possibly earn him a little bit more money. Derrick Brown is going to be the guy that puts Auburn back on the map as far as having a first-round draft pick. Derrick Brown, dead ass, no questions asked, is going to be a first-round draft pick this year. And Auburn needed one. Auburn needs to have a solid draft class this year. And that's going to help out with recruiting. I like throwing an occasional sweep screen. See, that's all the things that Anthony Schwartz can do. He stretches the field. He causes a lot of anxiety for the opposing defenses, especially in the secondary. Now, the only issue, Auburn Orange and Blues, that I have with that, all the way, I think he needs to show variations of that defense. The only issue that I have is you don't want Georgia's passing game is not that good to where you have to use those exotic schemes to stop them. I think variations of it, hell yeah, show them those looks. But I don't think you have to bail totally out into an exotic scheme like that against Georgia. No disrespect to them, but they're not quite at the same elite level passing game wise that LSU is. But no disrespect to your comment, but I think Kevin Steele should definitely use variations of that scheme against Georgia, especially in certain spots. With Schwartz, Auburn, they can stretch the field vertically, not just the sideline to sideline, and also utilize him as a decoy, kind of like how Alabama used to use, what was that receiver's name that torched Auburn in 2014? Amari Cooper. The same way that Alabama used to use Amari Cooper, that's the same way you can utilize a guy like Schwartz. Because Seth Williams still good. Of course, like I said before, you have Eli Stove and Will Hastings, who appears to be a little bit more healthier than he was earlier. All right, so let's see what not only my fraternity brother, but my line brother, Emmett the Chief Garrett, is talking about. Expand the route tree, coach. There's too much receiver talent to allow to go to waste, but I know that all depends on the holding up and the quarterback making the easy throws. I really like this comment because this goes back to what Auburn tried to accomplish against Ole Miss. What's up, Dana Caprera? Excuse my vision. I think I butchered your name. I'm sorry. But War Eagle to you as well, and welcome to Vernon Speaks for us, Auburn Sports Talk tonight. That's something that Auburn did a good job of against Ole Miss. The score didn't reflect it, but Auburn did a great job of getting the ball, passing the ball around and expanding touches for guys in that particular football game. So you're absolutely right. The offensive line has to continue to hold up and stop doing the unforced error thing. I think the Auburn crowd is going to help out because you don't have to fight so much with the crowd noise and all that other stuff. So I think that will be, I think they will play better, at least more sound at home at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Let's see. Tell that to Gus. What about Seth Williams, Eli Stove, and Anthony? Oh my goodness. See, that's where things can get real tricky. I like a situation with Seth Williams, Eli Stove, who's the other one? J.J. Wilson, and Anthony Schwartz at the same time. Now, even better, I've been seeing a lot of the comments. Even better, I like DJ Williams. I like in the beginning of the game, I think Auburn needs to test the water against Georgia and start to look at now, see, here's what's not going to happen. You're not going to run against Georgia in the A and B gaps. Just not happening. I think Auburn really needs to start pushing their running game, kind of like they did against Texas A&M. You got to attack the perimeter, man. These defensive lines in the SEC and Power 5 football in general, they're just too good at the point of attack for you to think you're just going to bust right up the middle. You're going to have to attack the perimeter. So I'm looking for DJ Williams to have. I'm thinking he's gonna break the whole curse of Georgia not the whole curse of not giving up a offense a rushing touchdown all year. All right, so we got Devon Mason that says, what improvements are you looking for out of? Oh, I appreciate that, man. Nice. Yeah, I appreciate that. All right, so what improvements are you looking for from Bo Nix coming out of this bye week? Now, I did a video earlier today, and I was very impressed at Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow and Bo Nix has the potential to be a Joe Burrow-ish type quarterback. Joe Burrow is not a guy on an RPO that's just going to hit you like Nick Marshall used to do. Kind of gate you around the corner. Joe Burrow is a very smart pocket presence type of quarterback. He doesn't bail on the play. As a matter of fact, Gary Danielson, sometimes I really hate listening to him because he's annoying as crap. But at the same time, he talked about how Joe Burrow expected. He actually wound up getting clocked on this play, but Joe Burrow expected for the offensive tackle to pick up on this particular blitz, and he didn't. What that meant was Joe Burrow trusted his offensive line to do the job. I'm still not sure if Bo is there yet for many reasons. One, the offensive line sometimes gets him off of schedule because of the unforced errors. And two, sometimes I don't think Joe Burrow trusts all the action that's going on in front of him. The game is still moving a little bit quicker than it did when he was at Pinson Valley High School. But what I'm expecting from Bo is somewhat of what I saw against Ole Miss. He began to be more patient. He was trying his best to be more patient. One of my favorite parts of his maturity is when he was scrambling outside of the pocket and he motioned Eli Stove to come back. Come on back, man. Help me out. And he wound up completing a pass in a very tight window. That was encouraging to me. And if those types of decisions can transfer over into a game like Georgia, then I think we will see the type of improvement that we need to see from Bo Nix. I think we're out of the whole true freshman threshold. I think he's seen enough sample size of how this game works in the SEC. This needs to be at least from a confidence standpoint and sound standpoint, a coming out party of sorts for Bo Nix. And I expect that from him. I don't expect to see the Florida Bo Nix. I don't even expect to see all the errant play from the LSU game. I expect to see a solid quarterback. That's true. Joe Burrow is accurate and Bo is not. And of course, you got you got some of the best receivers in the country at LSU too. So, I mean, but yeah, you're right. Bo Ainak. Oh man. So either way, I think Bo Nix also needs to continue to improve in zone read, and also his scrambling is just, I mean, my God, his scrambling is just, it annoys me sometimes. But I still like Bo. And I think Bo will continue to improve. Yes, Chief Garrett Danielson needs to shut up and let you watch the game. And I get tired of him trying to see. This is my problem with Garrett Danielson. I get tired of Garrett Danielson thinking he's such a, I almost said the F word, man. I get tired of Garrett Danielson thinking that he's such an expert, and he always thinks he can predict how things can turn out. As a matter of fact, he's made an ass out of himself constantly this season, trying to predict how a replay, how the replay official is going to call a certain play. He's been wrong every freaking time. He's like, oh yeah, this is definitely coming back. No, it's not coming back. The rule on the field still stands. Garrett Danielson, shut up. Shut up. All right. Terrible. Yeah, it's terrible scrambling, man. Notice Bo being more pocket passer than he did at first. I think Gus needs to mix it up for Bo. I think that Bo needs to start playing football. Appreciate it, Divine Mason, that $2 super chat, man. You all are coming with it tonight. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think, Gus Malzahn hasn't put Bo in like the most horrible position. I mean, you gotta connect on what's there. You know what I'm saying? So the scheme, I'll tell you what, if the scheme were to connect the way sometimes it has been open, I don't think that you all would say some of the things you say about Gus's offensive scheme. That's just my opinion. But I mean, it is what it is. That dude is the worst. Who we talking about, Gus or Bo? Man, I know y'all hate Bo on this thing, man. Yeah, Chief, I almost dropped it, man, because Garrett Danielson pisses me off. I kind of wish this game was going to be on ESPN or I'm not going to talk about Auburn radio either. Because sometimes what I used to do is I used to, when CBS was on, I would, listen to Auburn Sports Talk. But it's nothing against Rod Bramlett. I think the guy's great, but I'm still partial to, man, it's just hard to, not Rod Bramlett, the new guy. I can't think of his name. But either way, I'm still partial to Rod Bramlett. That's why it's just hard to listen to Auburn radio with and I should be ashamed that the name of the Auburn Sports Radio analyst is eluding me right now. But yeah. Yep. So I mean, going into this Saturday, I think Auburn is obviously in a position to really shake the college football. Yes, there it is. Andy Burt. I don't know how that name eluded me, man. Andy Bertram. I was actually about to look it up because I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't know his name. But man, I'm a Rod Bramlett guy. No disrespect to Andy Bertram, but that's still been kind of a hard pill to swallow. Cutting Auburn radio on and not hearing Rod Bramlett's voice. So much respect to Andy Bertram and all that he does. He's definitely has done a great deal of answering the call. I didn't get a chance to watch it, but I saw kind of the progression of it, and it's just kind of like sort of what Auburn basketball has done up to this point in the errant play. The man, one thing about the basketball team that's really they're going to have to get, as far as getting some things together, they're going to have to, improve on the free throw shooting and also the turnovers. That's something that they were able to, to really be, to have the advantage over other teams last year, is their ability to create turnovers. But now they're actually doing the turnovers. So I think that's an area that Auburn definitely has to improve. But something that's very positive is the fact that you have multiple guys that score double digits. They even got about 34 points off the bench tonight. So I think that's, you take you in early in the season, especially you got guys who haven't played together like that. You give them a chance to gel, and then you start to see the benefits after January. Yes. Andy Burcham is his name. Really love Andy Burcham. Nothing against Burcham, but it's just going to take some getting used to. You know what I'm saying? Because Rod Bramlett was, you look at the kick six call, you look at the prayer Jordan Hare, you think about other monumental calls. Andy just got a little catching up to do. You know what I'm saying? So big shout out to the Auburn Sports Radio. Those guys do a great job over there. Like I said before, man, I really appreciate you guys joining me tonight. I love talking about Auburn football. As you can tell, based on the content of my channel, I can talk about these guys every day because that's what I do anyway. I want to thank all of the people who have joined us tonight, all the super chats tonight. Definitely appreciate my fraternity brother. Me and him actually pledged Kappa Alpha Psi Theta Delta chapter that resides at Auburn University together back in the spring of 2000. Glad to have him on tonight. And all of the other Auburn fans who continuously support Vernon Speaks Sports Auburn. Like I said before, man, it's always great to be an Auburn Tiger. I hope you guys have a wonderful, incredible evening. I'll see you all tomorrow.